My name is Grace Clark. I'm 31 years old, and I thought I knew everything about my life. My apartment, my career, my marriage to Jason. I believed I was in control. But control, I learned that night, is nothing more than a fragile illusion. It was 2:47 a.m., a Tuesday, and the city outside was silent. My phone vibrated on the nightstand. Sleepy, I reached for it, expecting maybe a late work email or a spam message. Instead, the screen lit up with a name that made my stomach drop, Rebecca. The message was short, cold, and devastating. Just married Jason, been sleeping with him for 8 months. You're pathetic, by the way. Enjoy your sad little life. Attached was a photo. Jason and Rebecca, grinning, holding up a marriage certificate in front of a kitschy little chapel. The image was almost comical in its audacity, but my chest tightened anyway. My heart didn't pound, I didn't scream. I simply stared. For exactly 30 seconds, I let the shock settle. Then I typed a single word, cool. And I didn't pause, because in that moment, I realized something. My reaction wouldn't be anger. It wouldn't be begging or pleading. It would be control. Jason might have thought he could destroy me, but the truth was everything, our house, the main accounts, the credit cards, was in my name. He had only ever been the guest in the life I built. And now, I was about to make him realize exactly how powerless he truly was. By 3:15 a.m., I had canceled all her cards, changed every single password she knew, removed her as an authorized user on everything. I called a 24-hour locksmith who arrived at 4:00 a.m. By 5:00 a.m., new locks were installed, garage code changed, key fobs deactivated. Every potential foothold Jason had was gone. As I worked, I couldn't help but notice the irony. 8 months of betrayal, and yet he hadn't considered that I might be sharper than he assumed, that I might act before emotions clouded my judgment, that I might protect myself, not with screaming or confrontation, but with precision. The night faded into early morning, and I returned to bed as if nothing had happened. My heart, though bruised, was steady, calm, ready. And then came the knocking. By 8:00 a.m., 2 police officers were pounding at my door. The older one looked like he had seen far too many domestic disputes. The younger one had the polite skepticism of someone who didn't believe this could be real. "Ma'am," the older officer said, "we received a call about a domestic situation. Your husband says you locked him out." I showed them the Vegas marriage text, the timestamp, every screenshot of account changes, every transaction proving the house and finances were legally mine. The officers exchanged glances. The older one's eyebrows shot up. The younger tried to keep a straight face, but I caught the twitch at the corner of his mouth. I didn't flinch. I was calm, almost eerily so. "Ma'am," the older officer said into his radio, "you need to figure this out through lawyers. We can't force him to let you in if he married someone else." I wanted to smile. He didn't even realize how perfectly I had planned this. By 10:02 a.m., Jason's first ally arrived, his sister. She screamed, called me controlling, accused me of stealing, of ruining her brother's life. I had packed his things, the remnants of what he considered our life, into boxes in the garage. Calmly, I explained the rules. 1 hour to retrieve everything, leave quietly, no incidents. By noon, Jason himself hadn't appeared, but the tension was intoxicating. The audacity of thinking he could manipulate me, even after betrayal, was almost laughable. Every message, every accusation he would throw at me in the next few days would meet the cold, immovable barrier of proof. Proof I had already secured. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee in hand, and for the first time since reading that message, allowed myself to breathe. My life hadn't been destroyed. It had been revealed, exposed, and I was ready to respond, not with drama, not with desperation, but with strategy. Foreshadowing, I thought wryly, is a curious thing. Jason had written the first chapter of his downfall himself. By the time he realized it, the damage would already be done. Because while betrayal can shatter trust, it doesn't have to shatter you. And Grace Clark never shatters easily. By mid-morning, the quiet of the apartment was broken. Not by Jason, but by a series of increasingly frantic phone calls. I let them ring. The sound was almost satisfying, a low hum of chaos that belonged to someone else now. First came the police. I had already shown them the screenshots, the timestamps, the proof of ownership and account changes. They'd left, shaking their heads slightly, muttering about paperwork and lawyers, but their brief visit set the tone. Jason was legally powerless, and the law saw it. Yet Jason was persistent, and persistence can be a dangerous weapon when paired with desperation. By 10:30 a.m., his first ally arrived. His mother, Barbara. She stormed in, a whirlwind of accusations, her voice pitched higher than anyone should ever raise it before 9 a.m. "Grace, you've stolen from my son! You've taken everything!" she shrieked. I didn't rise from the kitchen table. I didn't flinch. Calmly, I gestured to the boxes in the garage. "Everything that belongs to Jason is out there. He has 1 hour to collect it. After that, I call the police again. No exceptions." Barbara's face twisted. Disbelief mingled with fury. She was clearly expecting tears, panic, or at least a fight. What she got was calm, measured authority. She sputtered, shouted, demanded that I unlock the doors, and for the first time I truly saw the illusion her son had relied on. The idea that he could manipulate me with family pressure. It didn't work. By 11:00 a.m., Jason's sister Susan arrived. She brought the full force of righteous indignation and accusations. "You're controlling, you're abusive, how could you do this to him?" I waited until she had finished, then leaned forward slightly. "Susan, Jason is no longer my husband. He married someone else while I was sleeping. Everything he owns that he wants, it's in those boxes. I suggest he come and get them before the hour is up." She gasped. That subtle shift, the reminder that time was ticking, clearly unsettled her. By 11:45 a.m., the door opened and Jason finally appeared. Rebecca nowhere in sight. He had the slack-jawed expression of a man realizing for the first time that his power had evaporated. I let him see the boxes, the locks, the evidence of careful planning. He froze. Grace, wait," he began, but I didn't let him finish. "I'm done waiting," I said, my voice calm, precise. "You've had 8 months to think about this. I've had 8 hours. The rules are simple. 1 hour. Take your things, leave quietly, and don't even think about trying to manipulate me again." His shoulders slumped. For all his arrogance in the past months, he had clearly underestimated me. And now he was forced to confront the woman he thought he could break, standing tall, composed, and untouchable. Barbara tried again, louder this time, shrill enough to pierce the room. "This isn't fair. You can't just—" I cut her off. "Barbara, your son married another woman, legally. He forfeited any claim to control in my home. Everything he wants is in the garage. I will not engage in theatrics, only facts. Take it or leave it." Susan muttered something under her breath. Controlling psycho, but I could see the hesitation, the cracks in their united front. They had expected chaos, and instead they encountered order. By 12:30 p.m., the hour was up. Jason had gathered some of his things, but the look on his face said it all. The vaguest thrill, the false sense of victory, it had worn off. He had thought betrayal would give him freedom, and instead it left him homeless, powerless, and exposed. I walked to the window and looked down at the street, feeling a quiet satisfaction. This wasn't about revenge, not exactly. It was about reclaiming my life. Jason had tried to invade it, to dismantle it, but I had been ready. I had calculated, I had acted, I had won without raising my voice. Foreshadowing lurked in every glance, every box, every locked door. Jason's attempts to manipulate me, to rally sympathy, to turn the world against me. They would come. But by now, I knew something crucial. I was ready. Stronger, smarter, and infinitely calmer than he ever imagined. By the time the door finally closed behind Jason, his mother, and sister, I allowed myself a single, small smile. They had underestimated me. Big mistake. As I poured a fresh cup of coffee, I reflected on the night's events. The affair, the marriage, the betrayal, all of it was painful, yes. But it had also revealed a truth I hadn't faced, my own resilience, my own power. And as any good strategist knows, the first battle is always the quietest, the smallest. The war had only begun. By the afternoon, the chaos had moved online. Jason, fueled by embarrassment and ego, launched his own narrative. Social media was now flooded with his version of the story. Grace, the controlling, vengeful wife, had trapped him in a loveless marriage. Posts, tweets, DMs, all painted him as the victim of a tyrant in pearls and a calm smile. I watched quietly from the kitchen, coffee in hand, letting the tide of misinformation crash harmlessly against my fortress of proof. I didn't respond immediately. I let it simmer, let him reveal more. Every accusation he threw would be recorded, time-stamped, and countered. I called my friend David, the tech genius of our circle, who I knew could uncover things Jason thought were safely hidden. Within hours, we had access to over a year of private messages between him and Rebecca. The planning, the lies, the financial manipulations, the boasts about seducing me while pretending to be the perfect husband. The messages were damning. "She's too naive about finances. I can run this perfectly and get everything I want," Jason had written. Another, "Grace won't suspect a thing. By the time she notices, I'll have everything." I allowed myself a small, sharp smile. So much for the illusion of control. Jason had treated me like a chess piece. I was now flipping the board. The first public crack came when I started posting evidence, carefully curated, showing the truth of his long-running affair. Screenshots of financial accounts, timestamps of messages, and undeniable proof of premeditation. Slowly, friends and colleagues began to see the real Jason, the man who had orchestrated betrayal for months. Meanwhile, Rebecca's role in all this became public knowledge. The narrative of her being an innocent love interest crumbled when I highlighted her complicity, showing that this had been planned and deliberate. Social media spiraled into chaos for them. Jason attempted to maintain a facade of innocence, but the proof was overwhelming. Rebecca, for her part, began receiving messages from mutual friends, all questioning her choices, all seeing the same messages I had exposed. The emotional tension hit its peak when Jason attempted a last-ditch effort, manipulating mutual friends, claiming I was financially abusive and emotionally controlling. He even tried contacting my boss, portraying himself as the victim of a harsh, unfair wife. I didn't panic. Instead, I calmly forwarded David's findings. Every incriminating message, every deceitful plan. My boss, familiar with the history and my character, immediately shut him down. His lies had nowhere to land. And then came the utter poetic justice. Jason had a joint grocery account he thought I hadn't been watching. Over months, I had quietly transferred funds out, leaving nothing. When he tried to claim entitlement, he realized he had been outmaneuvered financially as well. Rebecca tried to use one of the credit cards I had left active, but it declined. Jason, always relying on her, had to step in. The look on his face, shock, panic, helplessness, was almost delicious. Every attempt they made to reclaim dominance, to manipulate, or to intimidate failed. My strategic, calm approach had created a domino effect. The more they pushed, the more evidence I had to counter them. Foreshadowing. For the final part, the court case was inevitable. But even before that, Jason and Rebecca had been publicly exposed, their social and professional lives beginning to fracture. Their desperation and lies only made their downfall more spectacular. By the evening, I sat back reviewing everything. The city lights flickered outside my window, reflecting off the boxes in the garage, silent reminders of my victory so far. Every post, every message, every legal document was a step toward the justice I deserved. The war was far from over, but one thing was crystal clear. I was no longer a victim. I was a force. Jason and Rebecca had underestimated me, and that would be their undoing. The courthouse was buzzing, the kind of tense, expectant energy that makes every whispered conversation feel like a rumor and every shuffle of papers like a drumbeat of fate. I walked in, head held high, Grace Clark, 31 years old, entirely composed. The divorce hearing was scheduled, and everything had been meticulously prepared. Jason arrived first, nervously glancing around. He was dressed in a suit too tight, an attempt at dignity he clearly didn't feel. Behind him trailed Rebecca, clinging to her own illusion of triumph, and the ever-looming shadows of Barbara and Susan. They looked confident, or at least they wanted to appear so, but their bravado was fragile. The judge called the hearing to order. Jason's lawyer immediately tried the first angle. "Your Honor, my client was emotionally distressed, manipulated into leaving his marriage." I didn't flinch. My lawyer stood, presenting evidence that left no room for doubt. 73 pages of messages spanning over a year, financial records, timestamps of the Vegas marriage text, and everything showing the premeditated affair. The courtroom fell silent as the proof was displayed. The judge's expression shifted. professional to incredulous to almost amused, when the damning messages were read aloud. Jason's face turned red, his attempts at composure unraveling before the entire room. Rebecca's shoulders slumped, her confident smirk replaced with panic. "Ma'am," the judge addressed me directly, "did you plan this carefully?" I smiled faintly. Not to hurt anyone unnecessarily, I just ensured that truth and fairness prevailed. By the end of the hearing, the ruling was clear: divorce granted. Jason and Rebecca's marriage in Vegas was nullified due to bigamy, and the legal rights to property, finances, and any other claims were entirely in my favor. I retained full ownership of the house, accounts, and possessions. Jason and Rebecca walked out with nothing but personal belongings they could carry. The illusion of victory shattered completely. Outside the courtroom, Barbara shrieked about theft. Susan tried to throw coffee, but missed and hit Rebecca's mother instead. The chaos was almost comic, a final flourish of irony in a story of betrayal and strategy. I didn't flinch. I observed calmly, savoring the poetic justice. The aftermath continued in slow waves. Jason tried to recover socially, but the public exposure of his deceit and Rebecca's complicity made it impossible. Both were eventually terminated from their jobs due to company policies against fraternization. Mutual friends who had believed Jason's early spin of the story came forward, acknowledging the truth, some apologizing. I moved forward quietly but triumphantly, sold the house for above asking, purchased a downtown condo, and began rebuilding a life on my terms. I even started seeing someone new, a friend from the gym, Jennifer, who found the whole story hilarious and brought me coffee with "Not Jason" written on the cup. Most importantly, I felt unburdened. The betrayal had revealed not weakness, but strength. Where Jason and Rebecca had assumed manipulation and deceit would control the outcome, it was the calm, strategic approach of Grace Clark that ultimately won the day. And for anyone curious about regret, there is none. Life is a series of choices, and mine had led to justice, clarity, and empowerment. I didn't just survive betrayal, I thrived because of it. The final update came quietly. Jason's failed plans and Rebecca's short-lived illusions became a cautionary tale, a story of audacity punished by reality. And I stepped forward, strong, independent, and fully in control of my life.